Hi, Colin Davis, SolutioPodcast.com, ShadowTechAlchemy.com, and this is our Saturday, January 17th live broadcast. And this is the Saturday edition because I'm trying to pick up some Europeans who it would be about 8 p.m. in Germany, for example, right now. And we usually have our Tuesday night shows, 7 p.m. for North Americans, and that reaches certain time zones, but we're also doing this one to reach some other time zones. So that's what we're doing today. And let me tell you what's on the agenda for today, and then I'll talk for a little while, and then if anyone's hanging out and wants to get into the chat or wants to call me on the phone, you can call me on the phone. I welcome you to do that, and the call-in numbers and how you do that is in the description in YouTube. It's also at SolutioPodcast.com, so you can just text me through one of the two numbers, and then I'll call you back, and we'll have a conversation about your perspectives and what you're doing with your inner work, with your inner alchemy practice. So today we're going to talk about, I have two subjects to talk about today. One is this idea of the two paths for the red-pilled initiate. And I have a video on YouTube by that title on the Shadow Tech Alchemy YouTube channel. And so we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Jungian psychology and how that this is a basic operating system that those on this path can use, and that I encourage you to use. And I'll give you some books, and I'll give you some access to a library, and we'll talk about that whole thing. So right now, let me try to think if there's anything else I need to say just at the beginning here. I think I've given you the websites and all of that, so I think we'll just go right into it. So the two paths for the red-pilled initiate. Yeah, I encourage you to watch this video, and I'll actually put it later. I'll put it in the description for people who are watching this later, but you can find it on the YouTube channel. So what my idea here, what this is basically saying, is that first let me describe what the red pill awakening is, what it is to be red-pilled. Basically, what it is to be red-pilled is to awaken to the integrated nature of evil, the way in which evil is actually integrated into civilization, into society. And it's not just something that happens from time to time, that it's not just some time-to-time problem that shows up here and there, or some kind of aberration that if we could just kind of, attack it one piece at a time, we'll eventually get rid of it or whatever. That's not what it is. It's integrated into reality, into civilization, into society, into human behavior. It's integrated. And when you awaken to that, when you realize that there's so much evil in the world, and it's just all over the place, and that it's especially coming from the top of the power structure, and that you couldn't see it before. It was you were blind to it. You were in cognitive dissonance around it. When you actually get that, like in we could use the movie They Live from John Carpenter, where what's the guy's name? Randy Savage, I think his name is. Roddy Piper, is that his name? That's his name, Roddy Piper. And he puts on these sunglasses, these special technology sunglasses, and then he can see the aliens. He can see the reptilians, right? And all of their propaganda and everything. And so we are all walking around with a certain amount of cognitive dissonance. We're putting the dark side of reality down into the unconscious so that we can cope. And when something triggers an awakening to this new perception where you can see the dark side of things. You can see the corruption. You can see the lies and the mythology. And you can see all of the shadow side of reality. Then that changes you forever. And the movie The Matrix has a number of different levels of this. But at the political level, that's usually where people get red-pilled at first, is they see how a lot of the wars were lies, or things that the government is doing are based on lies and covert activity and all kinds of nasty stuff. And you find out, about the ruling oligarchy or whatever it is, however you end up looking at it, and you realize that all this dark stuff is going on, and that most people are in denial of it or in cognitive dissonance with it, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I see this, and it's incredibly shocking, and then you have to kind of go through this. You have to go through this, the effects of this initiation. It's a real initiation. And then you try to tell other people about it, and some people might listen, but most people won't. And then you have to go through all the fact that now maybe you're being ostracized, you're being pushed out of the conversation, other people think you're a crazy person, and all of this is going on, and you know how all that works. Well, what I say in this video is that this is an initiation that takes you, down the path into the unconscious. And at first, you are recognizing aspects of the unconscious, of the collective unconscious, right? And what that does is that turns you into what I call a red-pilled culture warrior. Right? And so now you recognize all this evil and you want to do something about it. You want to take action in some kind of way. You want to wake up other people. You want to get involved politically or in some way that you can start to mitigate all of this evil in the world. Stop the bad guys, etc. And so that's a certain mode. And it's kind of like an immune function in the body politic. And that's an important mode. And I don't want to say that that's not important. It's absolutely important. That immune function is absolutely important. And you have to go through that. This is a path of inner maturation, and you have to go through that initiation. And then you have to stay with that long enough to really integrate the implications of that. And so that's very important. And right now we're in a place actually where more people are being quote unquote red-pilled faster than probably any other time in history. And this is an amazing thing that's going on. And when I was researching 9/11 20 years ago, because this is when I was red-pilled in 2005, 21 years ago now. And I could only imagine that we would get this kind of a level of a movement of red pill people who are pushing back on the power structure. And so this is, in a way, this is kind of a dream come true. Of course, it's very messy, and the red pill people themselves are, their ability to be able to deal with the situation in a balanced and mature way is, they can't all do that. And so there's all kinds of sort of pathological ways that people are reacting after they become initiated in this way. But then there's a lot of it's a mixed bag, let's say, but it's something that absolutely had to happen, and I'm glad that it is happening. It's very good. It's part of our evolution. It has to be there. But after a while, you don't want to, there are people that is where they will be awakened into this level of perception, and then they will just stay there their whole lives. But the problem with that is that it does tend to burn you out, because you're constantly dealing with evil. You're constantly bringing evil and the shadow into your consciousness, which is something you have to do. It's a certain kind of shadow work. It's absolutely necessary. You have to develop a certain level of immunity to this kind of caustic material and be able to metabolize it. So it's very important that you go through that. But if you just stay with that, there is a, it's an occupational hazard, is what they would call that. You're working with some very, like I said, caustic or toxic material. And do you really just want to be, mentally eating that all the time? No, you don't. And so you kind of have to figure out, well, what is your role in this? As a red-pilled culture warrior, what's your role? And then you do your job, but you have to have what they call work-life balance, right? And so your whole thing can't be about fighting the bad guys, right? A lot of people get very, very pulled into that, and then they it just ends up eating them up. So those are important things to say. Then, after you've been there for a while, and after you've really metabolized this material, and after you've really established some kind of a worldview that is able to balance. Actually, this is actually the next challenge, is to be able to balance what you found when you put on the glasses. When you were awakened, when you took the red pill, you have to be able to balance that perspective of reality, where evil is a part of reality, but also be able to balance that with the fact that evil is not all of reality, right? And that's not all of human consciousness, and that you have to have you have to be able to, additionally from that, you have to be able to find a worldview, establish a worldview for yourself that allows this reality to be true on one hand, but let me try to see how I'm trying to say this. If maybe describe it as the problem is that a lot of people get red pilled, and then they establish some kind of new worldview. They say, oh, okay, I woke up, and now I realize that the Jesuits are running the world. They are the new world order, and they want to kill and destroy and whatever, sacrifice us, whatever. Or they say, oh, it's the Zionists that want to do it. Or it's the globalists that want to do it, or it's the communists, or whoever, and they pick their bad guy. It's the technocrats, it's whoever, it's Bill Gates, whatever, and they pick the bad guy, or a couple bad guys, and then that just takes over their consciousness, and they're not able to see that it is ubiquitous, and that it is part of the human condition, and it is part of the level of consciousness that we're at. And so then they just hyper-focus on that, because that allows them to project and to displace their own aggression onto that target. So by kind of shrinking the whole problem down into a certain ideology or view, then you can kind of use that as a continual target, and then it just becomes a shadow projection and displacement mechanism for you. And so so what you want to do is you want to graduate from that level at some point, and this is the next initiation, as I describe it in the video, is that this is what I call the psycho-spiritual alchemist. And that's basically what this whole show is all about. It's for people who are going to the next level, the next initiation, where they start to recognize through intuition, through personal introspection, through the study of perhaps Jungian psychology and things like this, they start to recognize that all of that evil in the world is the collective projection of our own personal shadows. And that if we continue to live without any awareness of our own personal shadows and not doing any shadow integration work on ourselves, if we continue to live in denial of that, it's like being blue-pilled to another level of the shadow. If we continue to live in denial of that and then just continue to project, and even though we woke up to the bad guys or something, now we're just using them to project and dump our own stuff, then we're still caught in a certain level of immaturity, and then we don't really have any ability to actually mitigate the evil that we see in the world. Because what you discover is that if you just remove the bad guys, the cabal or whatever, another group of them will just appear because they're actually serving a function. So in the psychological analogy, you have the military industrial complex or the pharma complex and all these different complexes. Well, you have the exact same thing inside the psyche. You've got autonomous complexes in the psyche. You have a deep state out there. Well, you have a deep state in here too. You have a shadow inside of your own unconscious. And this is where all of your lower nature is being repressed. This is where the effects of all childhood and intergenerational wounding and trauma are being repressed, right? So all of your reptilian and primate drives are down there and being repressed. And so if you just continue to focus on things out there, anything out there, whether you're red-pilled or not, whether if you're blue-pilled and you think that the scourge of the world is communism or something, and you're looking at it that way, or you're red-pilled and you're thinking it's the technocrats, the New World Order or whatever, you're still in a position where everything that's evil is out there. And you're not recognizing that the source of evil is the human shadow, which you are carrying some of. And you really can't go around in the world, once you become aware of this, blaming everything on everybody else while you're not doing your own shadow work, right? And so this path is the one where you take responsibility for your own shadow, you start working with it in yourself, you start integrating it in yourself, getting in touch with your lower nature, pulling it into consciousness, which dissipates it and reduces the amount of energy that it's carrying. And you do therapeutic practices that are effective on yourself, and you use your relationship as an alchemical vessel, and you understand the sources, the energetic sources in yourself of your own conflicts with your partner and with other people in your world, and you start using out the alchemical maxims and perspectives to be able to understand how the world is mirroring your internal state, and you use that as a diagnostic tool, and you go into the psycho-spiritual alchemist mode. Right? Now you're taking responsibility for your part of the evil in the world, and you're also cleansing and healing and balancing yourself and your relationships in the process. So that's the next step. That's where we have to go next. Now, most people won't go there in my lifetime. And the way I look at human evolution is I look at it, in a much, obviously you got to look at it on a longer scale here. I like using the Hindu Yuga cycle, whether that's accurate or not. We know that this is a very long-term thing. And we are sort of at a fulcrum point right now where a lot has happened very quickly in terms of technology. And, the last few hundred years, everything has become very, very rapid. but even just the last 10,000 years, So it's very, very quickly things have changed culturally, mainly on the evolutionary clock. And so we don't really know what's going to happen, or if the human species is going to bifurcate, if there's going to be some kind of a thing where we merge with technology, or some people do that and then other people stay natural, or whether, people go off planet, or we don't really know what's going to happen or any of that. But I myself, and Melissa Mari was dedicated to this too. This was our project, what we did. And that's another thing that brings me to, in a minute I'll tell you some updates on the movie with Melissa and some interview that I did recently, and I'm going to play you a little bit of music after this also. But that was our project, and this is the Human Potential Movement, basically a continuation of it. But we're really focusing on the shadow. We're red-pilled, and we're focusing on the shadow and understanding it and dissecting it and working with it. So that is, relatively new. It was kind of tucked into Jungian circles, and now that is coming out more. So this is kind of a new wave of the Human Potential Movement, and what I'm trying to do here is get people to get very serious about it, because whatever ends up happening with the human race, there's an absolute need for a greater degree of psychological and psychospiritual awareness, and that we have developed ourselves so greatly externally. Look at the last 150 years, externally, so much with the technology and everything and the physics and all that. And then we've let our psychology, we've gone into outer space, and we've neglected inner space. So it's obvious that a more mature humanity, whether we're half machine or not, or whatever it is, you don't want the machines basically, look at the AI, it's learning everything from us and our level of maturity now. So obviously human beings have to mature, and that's either going to happen on a slower timeline through trial and error, or it's going to happen more quickly if we put consciousness into it. And that's what alchemy is all about. It's about natural processes, but the human being gets involved in the natural processes and applies consciousness to it, and that speeds it up, and that takes you we become part of the evolutionary process ourselves. We become conscious of it and become co-directors of evolution. So that's what being an alchemist is all about. So this is a necessary path. This is a necessary lane, wave, vein that basically Melissa and I were basically, this was what we were made to do. And we really were doing it for many years, her maybe longer than me even. And then we sort of really developed this and put our books out and everything. And then we went out into the world and thinking that we would find peers, colleagues who were on the same page as us, and we weren't finding them. And that the people in the Human Potential Movement, the prior generation, the boomers that were still around, they were kind of they were winding down, and they never really tended to the shadow very much. And so this is a whole other path, and it's absolutely necessary. So okay, now, so where I want to go now is where are we right now? I'm going to play for you. I'm actually going to do a little pause. I'm going to read your comments, and then I'm going to play a video for you. I'm going to play some music for you. So Melissa, because we're honoring Melissa. Let's just go into that real quick. So Right. So people who are familiar with me and what's been going on know that Melissa was my soulmate and my alchemical partner, and she's not with us anymore. And 2025 was a whole year of intense grieving, and also me creating this film about her called Melissa Mari, Musical Alchemist of Stage and Psyche. And so I completed that in November, and I'm shopping it to film festivals right now, but I am allowed to play it privately for people, and so I've been doing that. And anybody that wants to watch the film, just send me a message and I'll send you the link. And so that's going on, and just 2 days ago I did an interview with Miguel Connor on Aeon Byte, and I think it's my third appearance on his show. And we honored Melissa on that show, and we played the trailer to the film, and you can find it at melissamarimovie.com. And then we talked about Melissa and my life with her and what she was like, and just her alchemical way of being, and her incredibly prolific life as an artist, as a musician, just an incredible musician, greatest artist I've ever known, truthfully, deepest, most archetypal artist that I've ever known. And so we talked about Melissa and everything, and I'm already getting some great. I'm getting, people are wanting to see the movie and everything, and I'm really so far I've gotten just so many incredible reviews on the film, and so I'm so grateful that it's touching people, and that I was able to do this, because Melissa and I, we knew that we were going to make a movie about what we were doing. We knew that our path was rare, and that we were very charged with metaphysical and creative energy, and we knew that what we were doing was important, and so we just filmed each other all the time. I was the one that did it. I filmed everything with iPhones and iPads and audio recorders. I was just constantly documenting everything. We were documenting what we were going through and what we were discovering and putting together. And so we knew that was going to happen. We just didn't know that Melissa's death would be a big part of this movie, and we didn't know it was going to go in that direction. And so that was just a real wild card. And so then when she passed, I had to basically figure out what in the world is going on here. And then I just immediately recognized, oh, the movie. I have to make the movie. And I just intuitively knew that. And I also knew that I'm still incredibly affected by the whole thing, but when time goes by, your recollections of people and the imprint that they make on you psychologically fades. And I knew that even though I'll always carry Melissa with me for the rest of my life, and actually her mission is now my mission, and so I will always be on this path. But I recognized that I had better make this movie now while the emotions are really strong. And so I just immediately got to work, and I thankfully, I was just very conscious of saving all this material, and I went through all the hard drives. I had many of them, and I just collected everything, pulled it all together, and started putting this movie together. So I worked on that the whole year, and I feel very good about it, and it feels. I just watched it actually last night again for the first time in a couple months of watching the whole thing all the way through. Maybe 6 weeks or something. I haven't seen it, and it was still. It still works really well for me. There's a couple things I could shorten it up a little bit in a couple of ways, but other than that, no, it's really hits well for me still, and it seems to hit well for the other people who have seen it, because just the reviews I've gotten are amazing. So I want to thank everybody who's taken the time and the emotional effort to watch the movie, because it is difficult, because this is very deep, very deep. Melissa was very, very deep, very alchemical, very Persephonic, if you want to say, and so it does. And then the whole thing with her getting sick and stuff is very deep. So it does take a certain amount of emotional, courage, a little bit, to watch it. But so melissamarimovie.com. So anyway, that's going on, and let me see what. Oh yeah, Serene Integral. I think I'll probably, unless you guys give me permission to use your name, I'll just because I know you now, but I'll just call you by your handle. What evidence can we expect to see if we're really doing the work? Good question. And let's I could do the rest of the show on that, but let's talk about that before I play this video. The evidence that you can, okay. The way in which we are guided on this path is through intuition, through synchronicity and feeling. We're feeling and intuiting our way on this path, and we're interpreting our progress through dreams and synchronicities as well. And so this is not something that we're necessarily measuring like doctors do with your cardiovascular health or anything like that. So we're also seeing the nature of our relationships change. At first, our relationships might, it might be somewhat destructive to our relationships. But then later, the relationships that we do build up are much deeper and more intimate. And so what we're seeing is we're basically, when you're doing some pretty deep shadow work, like if you're doing John Ruskin's emotional clearing practice, right? And you're crying, or you're pulling rage out of yourself, or you're letting fear come up into your body, and you're doing this kind of psychosomatic integration process like that, you're going to feel better after doing those practices. You're going to obviously feel better. You could have some kinds of some temporary effects, like it feels like your consciousness is a little bit shifted or above your head or something like that, but you're just generally going to feel better. You can watch your dreams after you do these practices, and you can see what comes up and interpret those. So there is or any of these, any kind of shadow integration practice, even just simple stuff like journaling, like just journaling, just like keeping a journal, or speaking into a recorder where you dump all your material into the recorder. I do that a lot. And so you are, or you're creating art, let's say, which is sort of a Jungian thing to do. And you're creating art where you're bringing your shadow material into your art. These are therapeutic practices. And you're going to feel better. You're going to feel a certain amount of relief just in your body, in your consciousness. So there's going to be you're going to be getting that. If you're doing it with your partner, if your partner is aware of this and your partner is doing this with you, then you're going to be seeing that more trust, more faith, more intimacy in the relationship, right? Because each person is pulling up material that was previously repressed, right? How you felt after you were hurt, or how you still feel about your parents, or about certain things that happened, or you start to recognize how you've identified with various things in your past that you don't want to identify with anymore. You're working on your triggers. You're talking about what's triggering you and why it's triggering you. And you're really getting in touch with your feelings, especially stuff that's generally uncomfortable. And then each person in the relationship sees that the other one is pulling this material out and being transparent, and you're emotionally processing this material. And people are crying more often, or when you get into conflicts, people are taking responsibility for their side of the conflict, right? And so it's not just, once you get to a certain level, you recognize that all conflicts are both parties, and then both parties can take responsibility for their side of the conflict. One person is usually more overt and the other person is more covert. And then you can recognize this. You can use models like Tolley's pain body model, or Jung's idea of a complex, or whatever model you want to use. There's a number of them that Melissa and I used. And then your partner is doing this work with you, and they're telling you their stuff, you're telling them their stuff. It just deepens the trust, it deepens the intimacy. And so that just feels amazing. That's just amazing when your relationship, no matter how long you've been in that relationship, is just getting deeper because both people are into this healing work. And you just get a feeling that you're on the path, and that this is good. And then you'll start seeing changes in your external world. Certain people will move away and other people will move in, and it's a slow process because the psyche evolves slowly. And then sometimes you're not feeling so good. And sometimes when you're getting in touch with this material, it doesn't want to move. Using the IFS model, you have different parts, and some of them are very scared. And you have what's called protector parts in IFS, and some of them will do everything they can to try to distract you from getting in touch with the wounded aspect, what they call the exile in IFS. And so you'll be getting some reactivity, and you'll be getting some pushback. And so when you're getting pushback, you also can recognize that that's because you're over the target, right? And so even when things are not as easy, and some days are easier than other days, even when it's not as easy, you get this general feeling that you're making progress, right? You get that dopamine, you get that whatever it is, serotonin, I think, whichever neurotransmitter is giving you the feeling that you're making progress, and that this is how it goes. So sometimes you're feeling a lot better and relieved, and there's relief in your psyche, and then sometimes there's pressure and pushback, but you always know that this is the work. This is how it's done. And we generally accept this kind of reality, this state of affairs, in external reality. You're at a job, or you have a project, you're building a new house, you're raising a family, you're developing a career, whatever it is. We recognize that it's going to be up and down, right? And then you're going to get progress, and you're going to see 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that kind of thing. We recognize that, and we can all talk to each other about it and say, oh yeah, it was really good for a while, and then it got really hard. And then you talk to other people, and they're like, oh yeah, I know, that's how it was for me too. And we all have that common understanding that doing things that are worth doing can be difficult, sometimes wonderful and sometimes difficult. We all recognize that. That's life. But because we're not generally so inwardly experienced, then when we go into that domain, we may not necessarily recognize that it's the same thing. And then you have all kinds of people that are selling us ideas that if you just do this practice, sign up for this workshop and do this practice, or read this book, or do these whatever, what is it called? I'm blanking on the word. Whatever, The Secret or whatever it is, that, techniques and stuff for imagining the world that you want to make for yourself. And that if you'll just stay on these practices, then you'll feel better. And then it doesn't really work, or that it takes much longer than we want it to take. And so then we're disappointed and all of that. We're sold. We live in the very fast society. I want it now society, or civilization, especially in America. And so people appeal to that. So they sell us that. Oh yeah, this will get you feeling better and more on track quickly. And that's just not what this is. This is a life practice. Just like diets and stuff, exercise or whatever. You actually can lose weight quickly. In certain extreme diets and stuff you can. But then how do you maintain it? Well, that's a life practice. Right? So this is a life practice. This is a way of being. This is a life practice. And so this also requires delayed gratification, extreme delayed gratification. And it's even more than working out in the gym and diets and stuff. Because if you let yourself go, it could take you several years to get your body and back on track and to feeling better and all of that. It could take several years. But with this kind of stuff, it's gonna take you. This is something that you're gonna get a certain amount of relief quickly, especially if you're serious. But the greater thing is something it's a lifetime, and you see big steps being made decade by decade. But this is what the mature person does. This is what the mature person has to sign up for, is a whole lifetime practice. And but thankfully, yes, you do see enough progress quickly enough to where you know that you're on the right path. And then when you're just tuning into your intuition, when you're tuning into your body, when you're tuning into your big S self in Jungian terms, the God image within, the archetype of you, when you're tuning into that, and when you have enough quiet and space in your consciousness to where you can hear those messages, those intuitions, then you recognize, yeah, I am on the right track. This is working. This is the thing that I should be doing. This is the right thing. And then knowing that you're doing the right thing and that you're on your path, that feels good. And so this is a very fine and refined path. This is a spiritual path. This is a very highly spiritual path. And this is something that you have to really tune into, that level of consciousness, especially within yourself. You're not projecting your spirituality out there. It's in here. Your spirituality is emerging from in here. And you're getting in touch with that level of consciousness. And so you get on that, and then you just follow those cues, and then you stay on it. And then if you do stay with it long enough, and this is your path, you'll only stay on it if it is your path. And then if it is your path, you will see in 10 years. You will see, oh wow, oh yeah. I mean, I look at, especially if you have an alchemical relationship. I had 12 years with Melissa, and And I matured greatly. Without that relationship, it kind of had to happen. It had to happen for me. And now I realize how, I probably progressed as what, internally is what many people would do in decades or in a lifetime, in that 12 years. And so when you have another person that you're doing this with, then you can make tremendous progress. So, but you do really just have to follow your intuition and know that you're on the path, and then you will see and feel results. So that's my answer, my long-winded answer to that. So now I'm going to play the shedding the skin video. So I think what this is Melissa and I put together this band, the 01 Experience, and it's still online. It's 01experience.com. And this was all of our alchemy put into musical form, put into performance art and songs. And we had and we basically had to hire musicians to do this because the whole, we're lifelong musicians, but the whole scene in the Bay Area, California Bay Area, was pretty dilapidated at the time that we put the band out, which we premiered in December of 2018. Worked on it for about 4 years, and got it premiered, and then COVID hit right after that and really knocked us back. But so we put all of our alchemy and everything into the band, and what we played on a projection screen behind us, we played like an art show, like a slideshow. And I found all these artists on this website, this art website called deviantart.com. And I found all these deep artists, and I contacted them and said, can I use your art in my slideshows? And the ones that said yes, I downloaded their material, and I made slideshows. So I have an hour's worth of material for different things for each song. And then I mixed in some other video stuff and everything on my own. And I put these video collages together. So we had this one song, one of my favorite songs from 01 Experience. Very deep, very dark. It's about the work. And just a tremendous performance from Melissa, I think. And then it's got this slideshow. And so I now, it's been kind of sitting in the background. A lot of 01 Experience stuff has been sitting in the background. And now I'm like pulling it all out. And I just uploaded to the Shadowtech Alchemy YouTube page this video. And so now I'm actually going to play it for you. And then I'll come back and we'll talk about Jungian psychology. So let's put this on pause. And here we go.
This adventure calls me. This adventure calls me. To the gold, to the gold. This adventure calls me. I'll never stop, never stop, never stop until I find the gold. I'll never stop, never stop, never stop until I find the
Kind of cut it off there a little bit quick, but yeah, all right, there we go. Pretty heavy, huh? Pretty heavy. Pretty darn heavy, and alchemical, I would say. That's on the Shadowtech Alchemy YouTube channel. Shedding the Skin, and the lyrics are on there. You should check out the lyrics. So now let's move into part 2. And so now we're going to talk about Jungian psychology as a Jungian psychology as a basic operating system for psychospiritual alchemists. And I'm gonna show you some books. And if you look in the YouTube description, I've given you some introductory. Some people are already on the path. People who are not, probably most people that would listen to somebody like me probably have seen plenty of things from Carl Jung over the years and thought, wow, this is cool. I like this guy. This is kind of just, it's natural. But what I've done is in the description, I've given you a list of starter books and some names of some Jungians whose lectures are on YouTube. And so you can start listening to those and read those starter books. And then I'm giving you a link to a Google Drive where you can find, I don't know how many gigabytes, but a lot, all of Jung's material as PDFs or ebooks, or probably not all, obviously not all, actually the whole collected works is up there. So basically, the vast majority of his material is up there. But he's very difficult to read. And so then there's some other folders of other Jungian analysts and Robert Moore, Marie-Louise von Franz, Robert Johnson, Daryl Sharp, all kinds of people are in there. And so and this is not something that I compiled. This is a folder. There's one other folder that I think I added in there, but the majority of this came from a folder that was being passed around on the internet several, 10 years ago or something like that. About 10 years ago. And so I've kept it, and I've put it there so that other people can get access to it. And so it's in the YouTube description. So grab all those files, and now you will have all the material that you could possibly want from Jungian psychology. And there's probably a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff that's not in there, but that you will find on your own. This is one particular Jungian's library that he made this. He scanned all these things, and a lot of these books are like PDFs he actually took a book and put it into a photo scanner, and so they're very big files and not that easy to read. But you can look at them and find out what appeals to you, and then you can go to Amazon or wherever and buy a copy for yourself. And a lot of these books are on Kindle, and so if they're you can read them on your Kindle or on your phone or whatever it is. So That's all there in the YouTube description for everybody. Now, let me answer her comment. Listened with me in a park surrounded by families enjoying quality. That's great. Yeah, good. That's nice. That's very good. Good environment. Yeah. So, okay, Jungian psychology is, even the term psychology it kind of puts it in the wrong frame, I think. Not wrong, but in a, it kind of boxes it down into a science or something, because Jungian psychology is really a mystical, spiritual practice and way of being, as well as being a science. Alchemy, it's alchemy. Alchemy is a spiritual and scientific art of transformation. A mystical, spiritual, scientific art of transformation, of personal transformation, of inner transformation. Transform yourself, all of society is transformed. The more people that take that seriously, the more humanity evolves. And Jung, was just this massive intellect. I don't know, whatever, 200 IQ or whatever, and just this natural second-tier thinker, just a total and complete genius, and spoke and wrote and read like 5 or 6 languages, some of them like Latin and Greek, and he's switching back and forth between these different languages, and he's so read of all the literature and history and philosophy of the West that it's just a huge undertaking to really to read his original material and to really integrate it, to metabolize it. And so this is why the Jungians, starting with his original colleagues like Marie-Louise von Franz and Amelia Jaffa, and even his wife Emma and Tony Wolff, and the original Jungians, and then the other one, then the other ones like James Hillman or Edward Whitmont and Edward Edinger, that came just one generation after. They really took all of Jung's work and they pulled it apart and they explained it for people. And so we have a few generations of Jungians who have taken all of his material and explained it and worked it through and worked it out. And so now we have this whole body of material from all these hundreds of people who have really contributed to this and to developing this into a true a way, like a yoga basically. And so we really depend on those people because it's so hard until you get a certain level of experience to go right into Jung directly. So I don't actually recommend that people go into his collected works or anything like that immediately. I'll give you some books. I'll show you which ones I think are from Carl Jung they're still deep, but people who are newer to it could read those and get a lot out of those, and probably should read those, but you don't necessarily have to. So Jungian psychology. So as a basic operating system for being an inner worker, an inner alchemist today, an inner alchemist, like I'm always explaining, somebody who's taking their own psychospiritual development seriously and who is probably consider themselves a self-healer or a wounded healer. Not everybody will be wounded enough to where they will identify with the wounded healer term, but self-healer works because everybody's at least somewhat broken. And so this is the person who is recognizing that they have the potential to heal, to mature, to work through their reactivity, and to discover the origins of their pathology, of their neuroses, of their repeating conflicts in life, to discover the origins of those things and to work those things out with introspection, with psychospiritual frames, perspectives, and then therapeutic practices. And so I think I would say the greatest thing that, one of the greatest things that humans can do with themselves. The technology and the external stuff and the ideologies, or let's say the philosophies of the political philosophies and all that kind of stuff, and whatever we call our modern society and all this there's a lot of, it's all very amazing, whether it's pathological or not. A lot of this stuff there's a shadow side to everything, but a lot of what we've done externally is incredibly amazing. But we've neglected ourselves internally. So at this point, I think that the most important thing that humans can do is to get in touch with their inner nature and start working on themselves from the inside out. That is, I think, more important than any technology or any economics or anything else. So this is literally the great work. And Jungian psychology serves as a very useful, and perhaps the most useful operating system that people on this path can use if you're in the West. Now, people who are in the East, they may differ, and they're going to have their own history, and they're going to have and there's so much, the what we would call esoteric, the esoteric tradition of the West, the equivalent of that in the East is much more in the open, right? And with us, you kind of have to really dig, because it was oppressed by the church over the last 1,500 years. And so, and prior civilizations. It's much more open in the East, but it's a different psychology over there, even though everybody's becoming westernized now. And so now younger generations, no matter whether you're born and raised in China or Malaysia or India or whatever, can actually get into Jung, I think, because the whole psyche of the whole world has become more Western. And we've all developed and this need for understanding the shadow and working with the shadow that comes out of Jungian psychology, and just everything that comes out of it, integrating your contrasexual images, the anima and the animus, and all this. This is all useful for all people. But that said, this is kind of a Western thing, and so, I am a Westerner, and I'm talking mainly to Westerners or people who are Westernized. So it's applicable to us. So this is our, because Jung he went back through the esoteric tradition, and he grabbed it all and he recapitulated it and kind of put it into his own practice, and he gave us a basic operating system for doing this work. Now, from there, you can take it and go into other places with it, and there's different, there's neo-Jungian thought, and there's all kinds of other stuff. I'm really into integral theory, spiral dynamics, and all that. I think that's really important, and that gives you a certain layer as well. But, that goes on top of the Jungian work. So I think on this path, I think you pretty much have to, I would say, if you're serious, get some basic understanding of what the Jungian principles are and the Jungian way of being is, and then you go from there. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to become a scholar of this or really understand it. Just, you don't have to become a Jungian, writer or lecturer or anything like that. I mean, I myself am not an expert of experts or anything like that. I would not want to write a book. I could write a book, Introduction to Jungian Psychology. I could write that. And I would get some help from somebody like C. Michael Smith, a good friend of ours who is a PhD Jungian. And, I would get help from him. I'd probably have him as the co-author or something like that. That's probably how I'd pull that off. But so I know enough about it to where I'm using it every day in my life. Melissa and I were using it every day in our lives together in our relationship, and it is just deeply helpful to navigating the inner path. So I would say that probably people on this path should probably have a Jungian book open all the time, and just have it going. You don't need to read 200 books or whatever it is, and you don't have to do all that. Just have something open all the time that you're looking at, and or listen to, I think you can, because a lot of these Jungians are online now on YouTube. The old audio recordings of people like James Hillman and Robert Moore and Edward Edinger and Marie-Louise von Franz and these others, they're on YouTube, a lot of them. You can probably basically get a basic education in it without actually having to read a book, just by listening to lectures. But because books are structured in such a way, people that write books structure them in such a way so that they give you modules that make sense one after the other. Things are ordered in most of these books in a way that's there to teach you. Is very useful, especially in the beginning. You can look at these introduction books, and they will give you all of the pieces of this in a basic way, and it's very helpful. It's very useful. And then also about reading, because I would say, a lot of people who are Gen X, millennials, a lot of people, all of us now, basically, really, because we're all online and we're just all, our consciousness is all sped up and everything. That's its own subject we'll talk about more. But we have to push ourselves to read. We don't maybe have to read, that much as people in prior generations probably did, but we always have to be reading something, and we can't get away from books. And some of the most important material that we're ever going to find is going to be in books, and because it was written in prior times. And I guess we're to the point to where you can now and going forward, you're going to be able to take books and have a computer read it to you in a voice that actually sounds natural. And so I think that actually is another option. You don't necessarily have to read that way, just in the traditional way. You could have books read to you. And so, we'll figure out when we get there, when you can do it now, but it'll become easier to do. And you'll just buy a book, in whatever format, and you'll just be like, convert it easily, quickly, and then even a paper book, convert it easily, quickly, and then the computer will just read it to you, and you can just listen on your earbuds or whatever it is. And so that's fine too. That way is fine too, but you have to get into books. So what else can I say about so the Jungian operating system. So this is giving you, this is a very, this is a path that on one hand is left brain and logical and scientific and evidence-based and based on actual therapy with people and people doing these processes on themselves and reporting back. This is scientific in that way, but this is also very right-brained in that way, in that this is very spiritual, and a lot of the types of concepts that we're working with cannot be proven because it's psychology and it's the psyche, and the psyche is invisible. And the psyche is so variable from person to person that this is very subjective. But there is a certain objectivity behind all of these subjective realizations. There is an archetype, so to speak, behind all of these complexes or states of consciousness. And then if you just learn about what the archetype or the basic pattern is, then you will be able to, have your own interpretation of that. It's like art in that way. So you have some basic techniques with your painting, or you have some basic scales if you're playing piano or some other instrument, and then everything from there is kind of your thing and what you do with it and your subjective experience of it, and whether it's good or not good to you is all subjective. And so this is very subjective in that way also. And so it's a middle way in a way, you could say. It's both left brain and right brain. And so I don't know if I'm going to go over all the different things in Jungian psychology, but I mean I could just name some of the. Maybe I will. I'll just right now. Let's see how long where are we now? Yeah, we have some more time. So, the basic understanding of there's a conscious and an unconscious, that's coming from Freud, and a basic idea of the conscious and the unconscious, and that everything that you're aware of, your conscious awareness, that's your consciousness, also called the ego. The ego in depth psychology, which includes Jungian psychology, Freudian psychology, Adlerian, that all kind of goes into depth psychology. But the ego in depth psychology is your conscious mind. It's not something you're trying to break or anything. You're working with it. You're not trying to get away from the ego like in Eastern spiritual practices. You're working with it. You're maturing it. You're making it flexible, but also strong. You want a strong, but very permeable and flexible. Let's not say permeable, but flexible. Yeah, permeable, but get too permeable and then you're a schizophrenic. So anyway, so you're conscious, you're unconscious. That's your conscious is your ego. And then in your unconscious, you have all these different kinds of patterns that Jung called complexes. And the word complex can be used to describe the organs or patterns of the psyche, but it's also used sometimes to describe negative patterns, destructive patterns, or what's called autonomous complexes. So you have your autonomous complexes, and your complexes have what's called an archetypal core. And so the core of the complex, the reason why the complex is acting the way it does, because it controls your behavior, it controls your thought patterns, it controls your feelings. Different complexes are running to give you different states of consciousness. And they're all tapped into certain archetypes. And so then Jung looked at mythology to find the archetypes of the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious is basically the total psyche of all of mankind. And just like how the mind is the product of personal consciousness, all your thoughts and feelings and all your subjective is that your personal consciousness. Well, culture and myth is the product of the collective unconscious, all of us doing this together over vast periods of time. So Jung would look in that library of culture and myth to find out what are the foundational patterns, drives, energies that are at the root of our behavior and our attitudes, and that are driving our complexes. And so that's where there's this emphasis on mythology and recognizing the symbolic and metaphorical truths of myths, and to understand that they represent aspects of human consciousness. And so that's why Jungian psychology very much looks to myth and to understand ourselves. And so that's all in this system. And then you've got the shadow. The shadow is the part of the unconscious where everything that resides in the shadow is that which is totally antithetical to the ego, to the conscious mind. So the conscious mind, the way he describes it is, I have to kind of bring in one more concept, that is the persona. The persona is the part of your conscious mind that handles the way you interface with society. So Freud called that the superego. And it's not super clear in Jungian psychology the difference between the two. You can kind of just overlay the two concepts. The Freudians didn't use the term persona, but per se, but the Jungians do use the term superego, and they kind of use that and persona together. But so the persona is the part of your consciousness that deals with your identity. You know, how you look, how you act, how you talk, everything about how you identify and put yourself into the world so that people can define you and identify you and find your role in society. And so people who are very superficial, we say, are focused on their persona, because the persona is the outer layer of the psyche, of the ego. Let me correct myself, of the ego. And so so now the shadow is the equal opposite to the persona. So everything that you really would not like the world to know about you, that you would not like to be in your identity, that you would not want to leak out to your friends and family and culture, that stuff gets shoved back into the unconscious, and we qualify that as shadow material. So the shadow is the nastiest stuff, and it's in us. A lot of it is very primal. You know, it's aggression, rage, aggression, sexuality. It's you know, and all kinds of shadow emotions like guilt and grief and shame, fear, all these things that you don't want to really show the world that you're subject to these things, but they are in there. And so narcissism and power drives and stuff like that, you know, you don't want to show that, you don't want the world to think that you're greedy and selfish and all that, but you are. And so that all goes into the shadow. And now in Jungian psychology, what we're doing is we're working with this material, we're coming to terms with it, we're doing an inventory of it, and we're saying, okay, this is part of me. It's part of me, it's part of everyone. We all have this primal nature. We're all wounded to some degree. We have all kinds of leftovers of wounds. We have all kinds of stuff in the shadow that we wouldn't want to really touch for ourselves or to show to other people. And so that stays in the closet. We sweep it under the rug. And so shadow work is about cleaning out the closet. And when we clean out the closet, then we become more integrated, more whole, less one-sided, as Jung called it. And so and you get into some deeper stuff with this too. I'll just kind of leave that there. That's basically what that does. And then that also heals you. By doing that, that heals you. It heals you from inner dissociation and that feeling that you're split and that feeling that you're living a lie or that you're a hypocrite. And it makes you more transparent in yourself and in your relationships and everything that we were talking about earlier about what do you get out of doing the work. You get that out of this, and so that's the shadow work. And then you can actually physically heal yourself by doing psychological work, although there is some limit to that probably. And in the case with Melissa, we kind of showed that even though you can progress tremendously psychologically, you may still be carrying some old, genetic things that are from your family line that may not be possible in one lifetime to transcend with psychological work. And not even physical work will do it. That's your fate. There are things that are going to be you're going to be subject to whether you do this work or anything or not. And there's no technology, there's no elixir of life and immortality, and that's the way that's going to be. But while you are here, You definitely are healing, and you are feeling better, and you are maturing when you're doing this work, and it starts with the shadow work. So then we have in Jungian psychology the idea of the anima and the animus, which is for a man, it's his inner feminine, and for a woman, it's her inner masculine. And so this is another thing that you're integrating. You're getting in touch with these patterns, these drives, these attitudes in yourself. You're becoming conscious of them, and you're bringing them into your personality, and you're integrating them into your life, into your consciousness. And this is something that's, on one hand, you're putting it into your persona. You might be changing your way of dressing or being or whatever a little bit. So there might be some persona aspect to it, but more of it is about how you're just, if you're a man and you're coming in touch with your anima, you're becoming more sensitive, you're becoming more intuitive, you're becoming more compassionate, you're becoming more open, these feminine traits, and you're allowing yourself to start to take on those traits. Or if you're a woman and you're integrating your animus, you're coming into your ability to be able to set boundaries, to be able to establish goals and fulfill them, to be able to defend yourself if necessary, and you're coming into your logos, your ability to think and problem solve, and you're putting those things into your personality, and you're getting involved in things in life that allow you to practice that. And then not only are those things becoming part of your life practice, but you can feel the change. You can feel your inner masculine or feminine integrating into you. And this is a slow process that happens over time. And in the alchemical framework, you start with the shadow, and then you move into the anima-animus integration. And I think that's kind of probably more or less true, but I think they're still overlapping all the time. You're always doing shadow work. You're always doing anima-animus integration. And then the third stage is the rubedo, and that's where you get into your elder years, and you have done this for long enough to where you actually feel whole, and you feel together, and you feel like there's not too much inner dissociation. So in Jungian psychology, there's also an understanding of the God image within, right? The imago Dei. And so this is kind of, I don't know if you call this a Gnostic or something kind of perspective. I think that small g Gnostic, maybe we could call it. This is kind of a perennial idea that there is a spark of God within every human. I would say within everything in the whole universe. The whole thing is God. This is all God. And it's all divine. It's all sacred. And so that's an understanding which is in this modality. And the imago Dei is your it's your central stalk, it's your central tree, and it's your central soul code. And the Jungians use all kinds of adjectives and ways to try to describe what they call the self. The self is not the ego. When you say myself, you're usually thinking about your ego, your conscious mind. But in Jungian psychology, we say the ego for the conscious mind, and then we say the self, and we spell it with a capital S to differentiate it from the ego. The ego is the small s self, and the imago Dei is the big S self. This is the part of you that's connected to everything, and it's the part of you that has basically your destiny encoded in it. And so this is where this is, and it's speaking to you through intuition, it's speaking to you through synchronicity, it's speaking to you through dreams. And it's very paradoxical in a way because the self includes everything. Everything is allowable in the self. Everything is in there. The shadow is in the self. And so this is a part of Jungian psychology that is kind of very different from dualistic religions like Christianity and others, that they push the dark side out there. They say, let the devil carry it. They push it out there. And in Jungian psychology, they put that into the shadow, and they say the shadow is the part of the totality of you. It's the part of the totality of humanity. It's a part of the totality of the psyche. And so there is a recognition that evil or destructiveness is built in, it's archetypally built in to humanity, into all life, and that it's paradoxical, and that we have to deal with that paradox, and we have to grapple with that. And because you could say that the self is not really living in the domain of time and duality and all of that. It's more transcendent than that, and it's outside of there. It's outside of time and outside of duality. And so it's a very slippery kind of paradoxical, but very, very powerful understanding. And by understanding this aspect of you understand God and the nature of God, the nature of the divine creation. And then you have this sort of, like the Christians will use Jesus as your interface with the Creator. And so, but Jesus is still out here. Whereas in Jungian psychology, Jesus is a symbol of the big S self, of the Imago Dei in you, right? And so, but where people get confused here is they say, oh, well, so you're basically saying that you're God? Well, not really, because we differentiate the self from the ego. When you let the ego identify as God, then you get inflation, you get hubris, you get, Icarus flying to the sun and crashing, and you get all of that hubris. And that's like the myth of Lucifer. And whereas in this case with the Jungians, we're not saying that you identify God with the ego. Definitely not. You identify God with this pillar within, this soul code within, that's constantly informing you. And that the only difference between this and having God out here in another figure is just simply kind of it's just a matter of perspective, really. And it's more of taking responsibility for these energies. And then with the Christians, they say not only is Jesus sort of out there, you can have a relationship with Jesus, but Jesus is still out there, but Satan is definitely out there. And the Jungians, the real ones, the deepest ones, will recognize that, well, no, Jesus is in you, God the Father's in you, Satan's in you too. And that really disturbs a lot of people. And but it's, if you go down this path, you can see that it's true. So those are some fundamental aspects of Jungian psychology that you will learn. And there's plenty more, but those are kind of some of the big ones. I'm trying to think. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. And I talk about archetypes? I did. Just ancient patterns of nature that become patterns of human behavior, of human thought and feeling and human drives, and they're represented. The archetype is not the mythological character. The archetype is beyond that. The mythological character is just the cultural image of that. That's all it is. It's just the image of the archetype, which is beyond perception. Comes from Plato's idea of ideal forms. So, so everything is about integrating. It's about recognizing the sort of the inner outer play of reality, and it's about recognizing these aspects of yourself, integrating them, and developing life practice of integration and recognition of this inner outer, as above, so below, as within, so without, mode of understanding. So I'll probably think of plenty of other things. In fact, I could open up this book here by Harry Wilmer and see plenty of things that I've neglected to mention. But I think that's good for now, for just a basic kind of a thing. And where are we with our broadcast? Okay, I can't even see my vision. Okay, 2:35. I generally kind of keep these to 2 hours. So now, if you look in the YouTube description, or I'm going to show you some of these books now, I'm going to recommend some books to people who are not familiar with Jungian psychology. And, I think people will probably see these things, after this is recorded. But so here we go. And I'll probably be saying a lot of these things for a long time because that's just the way it's going to be. I'm going to be repeating myself a lot, probably. This is the book I started with. This is the book I started with in Jungian psychology. Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert A. Johnson. And I still recommend this as the first, this is the first book I think everybody should get. Because this is the beginning of the work. And then now you've been introduced to a really great writer who is one of the most effective, if not the most effective writers who introduces Jungian psychology and everything about it, the whole feel of it, to lay people. And so also in the YouTube description, there is a link to the Wikipedia page on Robert A. Johnson. And you'll see like his 15 books or so that he has out. His books are all short. This one is one of the longer ones, actually, I think. They're all like 100 to 150 pages. Big text. And each of his books introduces you to a different segment of the Jungian way. And so you could read Robert Johnson and get a basic education in Jungian psychology, and that, he'd take you all across the whole thing. And he does it his writing is very easy to read. It's not very complicated. He uses everyday language. And so I definitely recommend Robert A. Johnson, Owning Your Own Shadow, as number one. Now, if you do want to kind of get into it from a little bit more of a therapeutic kind of perspective, if you are kind of a magician, and you kind of have to be a magician to be on the alchemy path, but if you are the kind of person that likes things that are a little bit more technical, and this isn't super technical, but this is a book by Harry Wilmer called, it's still in print, Practical Jung, The Nuts and Bolts of Jungian Psychology. And this one it's very cute, I guess, because he has all these, drawings. He's also an artist, and he drew, it's like just full of drawings. Like let's see if I can get this in focus to where it's not overexposed. But it's just full of drawings, and so it's kind of got that kind of cartoon aspect to it too. And he goes through everything, really everything in here, 3 times more than what I just described, all the different concepts and the transcendent function, and transference in the therapeutic relationship, the ego-self axis, which is really developed by by Edward Edinger, and he's got The Meaning and Function of Dreams. Oh yeah, did I even talk about? I didn't even mention dreams. I think I did originally, but I didn't really go into it as a major function of Jungian psychology. Yeah, we're interpreting our dreams here, and I kind of was more on the structure of things, but yeah. So dream interpretation is here, and it's just everything's in this book. So I would say Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert Johnson. That'll introduce you to Robert Johnson's work, and you can kind of proceed from there. He writes for men and women, and he's got books on feminine archetypes and the anima, or the feminine side of the psyche, and books for men and for women, and everybody should read all of them. Or I should say, nobody should think that you shouldn't read the book that's more pertains to men or more pertains to women, because we each have these what's called contrasexual images within us. So yeah, and Robert Johnson has a book on dream interpretation called Inner Work, and the main book that's by Carl Jung that I would recommend is Man and His Symbols. And if you can get one of the original hardcovers, which you can find it on eBay or Amazon used, then you get it in color, and you get all these pictures. It's just loaded with pictures, and all the basic Jungian concepts are in here. And there's a lot of mythological, this is all culture and myth. And this was written, Jung was writing this with his partner, or his colleague, Anelia Jaffe, and they put this together. But then Jung passed in 1961, and this was released in 1964. So this is a great one, and this is his actual material and his actual words. And but it was done in a way that was for a lay audience, even though it's more intellectual probably than Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson is easier to get into, but this will introduce you to Jung himself. Also, people often recommend Jung's autobiography, which was also released posthumously, which was Memories, Dreams, Reflections. That's his biography. And that is also written in lay language. And so people that want to, hear more about Jung, the man, and like the different stages he went through and all of that, that's in there, or that's available to people. And those two books, Man and His Symbols and his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, those are often described as intros to Jung's writing himself. Let's see. Then, in my pile here, a lot of my books are still in California. I only have a limited number of books here in Texas. But so, yeah. So anyway, if anybody, by the way, I just wanted to show you, if anyone wants me and Melissa's books, Shadow Tech is the book that I wrote. I wrote it, but it's based on me and Melissa's work together. You can get that on Amazon or shadowtechalchemy.com. And then the Transforming Darkness was the book I wrote in 2024. Melissa was still alive at the time, but she wasn't contributing so much to this one. And this one I give out for free currently, and it's also on shadowtechalchemy.com. Now, I think before we wrap up, I'm going to also give you one more thing to add to the whole thing. Internal family systems, because internal family systems is very similar to Jungian psychology. It's much simpler. It's much smaller. Like if Jungian psychology is this big, internal family systems is just little compared. But but it is in line with it. Our friend C. Michael Smith, he really likes it also because it's in line with indigenous shamanism, of which he's an expert, and Jungian psychology, which he's an expert in. So it fits right in there. And it's a way of understanding the different needs of different aspects of your psyche, because we are a multiplicity, as they describe in IFS. The psyche, the personal psyche and collective, but the personal psyche is a multiplicity. It is a collective, it is an ecosystem, and parts are oftentimes competing with each other, or they're not always getting along. So you have dissociation, it's called. And so what we're doing in IFS is we basically anthropomorphize. We personalize these parts of ourselves. We give them names, and then we use our intuition to talk to or communicate with these parts of ourselves. And whether you're really talking to a part, or whether you're just using that as a tool to get into your unconscious and get into stuff that's kind of in the back of your ego, it doesn't matter. It's a way of familiarizing yourself with the different parts of your psyche and what their modalities are, what their interests are, and how you have different parts. You different types of parts. You've got what's called exiles, and these are the wounded parts of ourself, and they're wounded and they're split off and they're kind of stuck in the corner. And then we have two classes of protector parts that are basically protecting the exiles with all kinds of different strategies. And so you've got managers and firefighters. And managers are the parts of us that basically direct our lives in such a way so that we won't get hurt again, so that the exiles don't have to feel pain again. The little orphaned parts don't have to feel pain again. And then the firefighters are the parts that come in when the exiles, when the managers can't do that, when things go wrong. And then they have to come in and force you to do something extreme, like get drunk or do something extreme to try to make the exile feel better. But generally the managers are in play, and they're just sort of controlling our lives, or making us, move away from things that are difficult, and they're trying to protect us, but they're doing it in maladaptive ways. These parts are doing it in ways that are based on a child's understanding, and sometimes a very small child's understanding. So they're stuck in the past. So IFS is a system for getting in touch with these things and understanding the behaviors of our inner parts. So it's a very, very simple but elegant. It's almost a childlike kind of psychology, but it's also very deep. And so it fits right along with Jungian psychology. So the book that Mikal recommends that I do too now is a very simple one called, this is the one you start with, We All Have Parts. And this one is actually good, not only just because it's simple, but because it looks like a children's book. Let me open this up. It looks like a children's book. It's like a, and in a way it's good because it kind of activates your inner child. And it causes you to kind of step down to child level to understand things. And it's very non-threatening. And so this is a good intro. We All Have Parts by Colleen West. And then the next book to get is a book by Richard Schwartz, who is the originator of internal family systems, and that's just called An Introduction to Internal Family Systems by Richard Schwartz. It's his introduction book, and it's been reprinted a couple times. Just grab that. This is just a cheap paperback. It's like $10-15 or something like that, or Kindle or whatever. And that's really those two books, and you kind of got what you need to be a lay person that's working with this on your own or with your partner. Now, if you're more serious about it and you really want to go a little more deeply, but you don't yet want to sign up for expensive classes and start, becoming certified in it or whatever, you can spend $50 or $60 on this book, Internal Family Systems Tips and Practice Skills by another friend named Ayan Farvahar. And this is also on Amazon. And great thing about this book is that it's very deep, but it's also written in a way that is gentle and is very explanatory and easy to read, unlike something like Carl Jung. And so so there you go, and those are listed in the YouTube description. So now you have your Jungian psychology and you have your IFS, and I would say that plus whatever else people are interested in. People could be interested. You can be on this path, be into anything, all kinds of practices and esoteric stuff and everything, and astrology and tarot and all that stuff. It's all great, but in terms of actually working on yourself and actually living a life of a person who's developing psychospiritually, the Jungian psychology is at the core of it. And otherwise, it's just there's other. There are people who get into Heinz Kohut self-psychology. I think Freudian psychology has been pretty much superseded, but a lot of it is still integrated into all psychology. It's just part of it now, but a lot of that has been superseded. And even some aspects of Jungian psychology have been superseded, but still the core of it is still, you're not going to run into any problems with it. A lot of people who are very left-brained and scientific, and are not on the spiritual path, are going to look at Jungian psychology and think that it's too fluffy and too subjective and spiritual. But we don't have to worry about that because we're spiritual people over here. So there you go. So you have the Jungian psychology as your basic operating system, and then you can build from there. I put integral theory on top of that. I put all kinds of things on top of that. And then you have your IFS as an additional modality, and then you can plug in whatever else you want to plug in. I use John Ruskin's system and all kinds of other stuff. A lot of that is described in my books. So that was there. So that's what I wanted to do for today. And the reason why I did today's broadcast, like I said earlier, is because I'm usually doing these broadcasts on Tuesday night, and that's really all I need. Just one of these a week. And then, I'm looking for an audience. I'm looking for people to get involved and to comment and to call in and to participate so we can have like an alchemy cafe over here. That's what I'm really looking for. And I recognize that I have to be very consistent with these programs. And, when this is all coming out of the fact that Melissa's not here anymore. Because when Melissa was around, we were very self-contained and in the laboratory, so to speak. And I did do Zoom broadcasts every other week, but I didn't really push them or anything like that. And now I'm putting it on YouTube, and I'm looking for a wider audience, and doing interviews and things. And so I'm getting out there more because I realize that's a community mode, that I'm in community mode now. So that's what I'm doing, and I need to be consistent and put out material consistently so I can build an audience and get this out to more people and have a community going. So that's what I'm doing. And these Saturday shows I was, doing them on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. Most people in the United States or even South America can join that because it's in the evening time after work, and it might be a little early for some, on the East Coast on the West Coast, that'd be 5 p.m. So they could come in like maybe at 6 or whatever. But not everybody can get there in time. And so I said, okay, well, I'll do an additional broadcast on Saturdays so that people, wherever they are, especially in Europe, can access these shows and call in. But currently, even though in music world, my whole music career is to a great degree built on Europeans. And my work as an audio engineer, I work with mixing and mastering people's music. Probably most of it's Europeans. So in music world, I'm very interfaced with Europeans, and I go there all the time and stuff. But for this alchemical work, most of my audience is in the United States. And so I've been wanting more Europeans to get involved. And so that's why I'm doing these on Saturdays. But I might switch them to Sundays. I might switch it over to one Sunday a month because I'm usually busy on Sunday. But I might change things up so that I could do one Sunday a month at this time to reach Europeans. And then just keep doing my normal Tuesday shows, which anyone can see after the fact. You don't have to see these live. I want people to do that live because I want them to come in and comment and call. But in fact, I could just have the whole Saturday or the whole Sunday show could just be callers only. But I got to get to that point. So anyway, that's what this was about. And I always want these shows to be a combination of a place for other people to get involved and to learn something, and to listen to me proselytize, basically do missionary work on this cause, on the cause of inner development and shadow work and self-healing and alchemy. So that's want to kind of give you guys both things there. So I think that's going to close it out. Let's see where we are. Yeah, 2:57 p.m. my time. We did 2 hours today, so that was good. And again, we'll be back on this Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central. And then we'll keep on going. And if anybody's hearing this and wants and knows anybody else that's on this path, please recommend it to them. Show them the YouTube channel and tell them that these broadcasts are on the live tab. And then tell folks to go to shadowtechalchemy.com and download my last book, Transforming Darkness, for free. And then that'll put you on the mailing list, and then you'll get some mailings, a few times a month or something, to let you know what's going on and to remind you about the show. I don't think I will send more than 4 mailings out a month, so you'll never be bombarded with my stuff. But yeah, so there you go. Thank you all, and I will see you soon.